You're listening to The Artist Athlete, episode 125. This podcast is dedicated to Circus. It's a place for professionals in the industry to share their stories, viewpoints, and information, and a place for outsiders to get a sneak peek into this world. Hey, friends, fans, and foes, I'm Shannon McKenna. I'm the host of the Artist Athlete podcast and the founder of theartistathlete.com. I hope y'all are having an amazing week. I know last week's episode was a big one. You might still be processing it. You might still be getting through it. So I figured this week we would take it back to the roots of the Artist Athlete podcast, talking to performers about performing in circus. And I'm really excited to share the guests that we have today with you guys. Before I do that, obviously I have to talk about the Patreon, because without my Patreon, patreon.com/theartistathlete, this podcast literally would not exist, because I would not have the money to pay the people who make it happen. My amazing editor, Allison, wrote me the other night and she was like, I really appreciate you. My whole family appreciates you. We have some financial goals this year and we're going to meet them because I'm editing your podcast. And I was like, damn, that's big. That's really cool that I've created this thing and that you, the listeners who are Patreons at patreon.com/theartistathlete, are giving small amounts of money to make this thing happen so that I can pay Allison and my assistant Hannah, who is a circus performer in her own right who needs to pay for training, making this whole thing for the community and then giving back to the community in this lovely little cycle. I'm just so here for it. So if you love what you're listening to every week, patreon.com/theartistathlete is the place to go to keep it happening. And if you want even more of my voice on the mic, I do a little mini-sode every week now, and it doesn't matter what level you give at. I want it to be as accessible as possible. And I talk about different topics that are happening in my life or in circus. And this week I'm talking about consistency and showing up. A lot of y'all have been asking me questions about that, so we're going to make it happen. Patreon.com/theartistathlete. That's the last time I'm going to say that URL in the intro. Let's talk about our guest. Impassioned by the performing arts, Martin Frenette started an intensive dance training at a very young age before trading pliés and bars for ropes and somersaults at Montreal's National Circus School. He has spent a decade in Europe performing in various productions: Circus Monty, Chameleon Theater, Wintergarten Varieté, Cirque Buffon, GOP show concepts, and the Friedrichsbau Varieté allowed him to grow artistically and humanly. Martin also works as an artistic consultant, director, and choreographer for both circus and dance projects. He enjoys splitting his time between Europe and North America, working on stage and creating for others. Writing has always been a big passion of his, and he has become a regular contributor to several publications and online blogs, such as our friends over at Circus Talk. Here's my interview with Martin Frenette. Martin Frenette, welcome to the Artist Athlete podcast.
Thank you.
Yay. First question I always ask everyone is introduce yourself to the audience. Who are you? What do you do?
Well, I'm an aerialist and a dancer. I'm a circus artist. I'm a writer. I'm a choreographer. I live for the performing arts. I was trained as a dancer from a very young age. And then I needed some more challenges. So I went to the National Cirque School in Montreal, became an aerialist, and it's been my life for the last 17 years. I'm really passionate about performing, about attending shows, about creating. I often say that also, for me, life is movement and movement is life. So whether it is dancing, flying, acting, being on stage, running around, I find movement to be what inspires me the most, actually.
Yeah, totally. Do you remember the first time you realized that philosophy, movement is life?
Honestly, yes.
Yeah.
No kidding. I was 5 years old. I was in this small neighborhood dance school that I was there for about 10 years or so. And the first week, or one of the first classes I was there, our dance teacher um, she went through some moves and literally said, like, we were like, yeah, like 5, 6 years old, saying, okay, well, this is slow, this is more like adagio, this is staccato, this is and broke down like the same choreography in like 3 different speeds and explained us like that is movement, but it can be X, Y, and Z. So, and I looked up to that woman for years because I mean, she really taught me the essence of movement. So I think early on to understand even that. So at 5, what is adagio? What is allegro? What is fast and slow for the same movement? So that started really early on, clearly.
It's like this whole vocabulary or like way of communicating that's not speaking, but
Mhm.
has its own like rules and systems, you know?
Totally, yeah.
How did it feel to transfer from dance to circus?
I think it was a necessary step for me to do because I think my whole family, most people that I knew, thought like I'm gonna be a dancer. I'm gonna be in the ballet company or in
Mm.
musicals, or they really were convinced that's his path. Good, but I something was lacking. As I said, I was 5, and I think around the age of 15 or so, like I was looking for a bigger challenge. I wanted to,
Mm.
the cliche of like fly higher, jump higher, run faster. And I was lucky enough to attend circus shows and to see some on TV with Cirque du Soleil, like Eloise, that was like in the late 90s. Um, and that all of a sudden was like the click of, wait, that could be something. And we even had like a contortion, contortionist that came to the dance program I was in, and she gave us workshops and to see us her body, how she could push and how I could push myself. I thought, like that could be the way to jump higher, to run faster, to fly. So that was like, I know I wanted to express myself with movement. I know I wanted to do more of my body, and circus felt of very foreign, and I was looking for a challenge because I had been a dancer for about 10, 12 years. Like, I need something more. And this idea of being on a trampoline or trapeze or tarawaya, which were all strange, like I had no idea what it was like to jump on a trampoline. Even like the first time I jumped on a trampoline was at my audition, literally. So
Wow.
there was this need for taking a bigger challenge, more, as I said, more ways of moving, more movement. It really went back again. Things like the movement, how big and different it could get, really.
As a dancer, how do you approach tricks?
Yeah. Well, I have the funny thing is, I have to say, like, I do not consider myself a dancer.
Oh, okay.
No, but I mean, let me explain. Meaning that for me, you have to be. Let me break this down. Actually, I am a dancer, but I wouldn't call myself like a professional dancer. Meaning that I don't spend 20 hours a week. Like it isn't my full time focus anymore.
Right.
But where I was moving this is actually over the years, many people that I've worked with or that have been around me when I was training or performing that didn't know me or my background, I was like, so you're a ballet dancer? Like, are you coming from dance? Or there was, I think there was a way, the way that even that I warm up, many people have told me that you are like a ballet guy or like, so I think my roots are there and I still am really fond of dance and of ballet and of all these forms of dancing. So I think that influenced me definitely when I was in circus school. And I didn't want my act obviously to be just a bunch of tricks. And it went back again to being 5 or 10 or 9 or 12. And the way I saw my dance teachers and the choreographers I worked with, how even they linked. Like, how do you go from piqué jeté to a pirouette and then down the floor? And I think being able to work with so many different dancers and dance teachers really opened my eyes as how can one link movements. And then
Mm-hmm.
I was able, I think, to break down. And that's something my coaches, some of them at ANC, told me when I was learning aerial disciplines, that you have a way of stopping the movement at the right place or like to break it in half. Like it feels like in your brain it's in 3 parts, but you go into one. But I think there's a way that comes with dancing that you really are more aware of what your limbs are doing. So on that point, I really think when it comes to movement, especially with the aerial work, the dance background I have helped me to really link and not to see it as 10 different tricks or movements, but one long phrase. So it's more about phrases than tricks to me.
No, I ask, I guess, because I come from an acting background. Like I grew up, my dance was mostly musical theater based. It was really influenced, like all the movement I did was in service, or it was physical theater. It was all in service of acting, which is like living truthfully under imaginary circumstances, telling a story, like a very narrative or literal structure to it. So now, even though I don't consider myself an actor, I don't audition like an actor. I don't, but I approach my circus work like an actor. And I'm always interested in how gymnasts approach the work or how dancers approach the work. So it's really interesting to have that insight in the idea of phrases instead of tricks like you would in dance. And I'll post your video of your trailer for the apparatus that you do. But it's very unique. Actually, it's kind of cool. I actually have an act on a similar apparatus with a partner. So I have a duo act on something. But I would love to hear you explain this apparatus because I have trouble doing it.
Well, it's either who you're talking to is either a double rope or double cloud swing.
Yes.
So basically, it's two ropes, a long one, a short one, that are linked together at the top. So it's a double point. There are 2 points, and they're hanging like a cloud swing would do. So the ropes are long, but then there is a gap between the two of them because they're different length. And years before I entered ENC, there was an artist there who did triple rope. She had 3 ropes, which was I'm still a fan of that actor. She has retired since, but I like the way she would create puzzles and like these images, and that was inspiration for my work. Although if you look at her acts, there's nothing in common, and especially in my case, I wanted to swing as well. So then I saw her, and I was like, I could never. 3 ropes, I will get lost. 2, I can handle. 3 would be too much, So
yeah, totally.
So basically, it's 2 ropes of different lengths that are linked together, and I can, because of that gap, I can jump from one to the other. I can link them, make some knots. It's all about exploring each of them and how they can connect as well.
And did you train it? Because when I tell people I do like a double cloud swing or a 2-tiered cloud swing, people think of it as very dynamic. They think of like corde volant, like the swinging in the air. Did you train any of that at the school?
Yeah, well, actually, my first years, I was only swinging, actually. My act when I left ENC was a swing act. It was actually my very first act was no static. It was all swinging. So I learned some of the classic traditional swing tricks. However, my coach and I agreed that a bit like with the triple rope, 2 ropes is enough. I didn't want to have a safety. I didn't want to have a lunge. I didn't want to have someone holding me. I thought, because also when we're training, often the line would get in the way. We couldn't do some tricks or moves because of it. So the thought was, let's bring the bar lower. Let's be closer to the ground. And let's do tricks where, in a way, I'm always safe. I mean, knock on wood, who knows what. But the way we developed the tricks, I always had one of the ropes wrapped around, or there was next to no chance of me of falling off of it. Therefore, I didn't do any double twists or like saltos. I had other tricks though. But yeah, I was the first maybe 3 years of my career was 2 or 3 years were only swing actually, and then I eventually added some static, and eventually went on to only static work. But yeah, it was my main act was swing actually. Yeah,
that's fascinating. And did you? I feel like so many people this happens to, where eventually the reason that you stop swinging is because the work for a static or lower points there's more of it out there than it is for swinging. Was that kind of your reason, or was it more artistically led? It looks from your face.
Yeah, a bit of both. Actually, at one point I started to do half and half. Like my act was half static, half swing, and I always really enjoyed. Like the swing section was, in a way, there was a circus tour I was doing that I every night when I would start to swing after the static intro, I was like, okay, now is the fun. Like the static felt like work, and swing was like, okay, now I get. Especially when it was summertime and it was heat big time. I because the tent they would raise the tent around, it would create wind when I was swing. So like, okay, now I get a breeze. Awesome. But no, the reason why I stopped swinging. I think the last swing can write. Well, no, see, even now I'm still doing some. I for a long time I would still do the half and half, but eventually the static part became more like 4 out of 7 minutes or out of 6, and I will still swing for specific occasions. But also I was lucky because I'm lower to the ground. I was able to perform in even like in small theaters or in even in nightclubs or small venues because I could swing while not being because I don't need like 10 meters or 30 feet. So it stick for a while, but the last thing I was on that point though is I'm aware also for my body, swinging is a bit rougher. I feel on my body after these years. So for a longer career, like sticking to static is good. Like it's softer on me. It's I want to go on for another like 10 or 15 years. So I'd like to let's static is good. It's healthy in a way.
That makes a lot of sense. I hadn't even thought of that, like a sustainable longevity aspect
Yes.
to what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Super smart. Do you mind me asking? So you've been doing circus for 17 years.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
And you want to do it for another 15?
Maybe.
I love it.
Like it's honestly, I think if I'm going to be honest, I feel like I could go on for another 10 years. Now the way I feel, and in the last contracts that I did, where I was actually only doing my act, and it was only the static act, like it was like this 5.5, 6 minutes act. Quite often I realized like, oh, during that one of shows, this could go on. I feel again with my body, I felt, and I'm not bored of this act. I'm at a point where I feel like this is the summon, like this is what I was aimed to do probably for my whole career. And this act I really enjoy, and my body can sustain it. So I think, again, knock on wood, if it all goes well, I could go on and just do this act, not of the shows where you have to jump and tumble and like do 20 other things. But if it's only about this rope act, which my body knows really well, I could, I think, go on for 10 years if life allows me to,
Congratulations. That's such an incredible point to reach.
Hopefully.
What do you do? You say you're not bored of the act.
No.
What do you do to keep it fresh for yourself?
Well, again, I think because it's been so many years and I've been through so many versions of it through times. And even here, I'm going to quote a friend of mine. Her name is Romy, and she does rope. She's in her late 40s now and has been doing rope for 20 something. In the 30 years, she once told me, like, your body knows which tricks it likes to perform. So does your heart. Like, so pick your favorite tricks. Same thing for as you're aging. If you're gonna have to do 8 or 10 shows a week, maybe do the trick that you like the most and are less damaging for yourself. And if you only do your favorite tricks, well, you can't get bored of them, And I realized a few years ago when I was reworking on a new song, I really realized that trick that I've been doing for many years, kind of done with it. So why am I keeping it? And it's not like a huge crowd pleaser. It was always part of the section. But yeah, maybe let's try something else, And then, well, also I've worked with my different songs. And the thing is, I've never been one to just copy paste. I can't go on, like, if you throw me a song and like, hey, well, go on perform act. I want to hear it first. I want to adapt the choreography, find the right accents. That was really good. But then, as I said, though, now I think I have found that song that I think fits the act and fits me best as an artist and as a person. So now I'm at a point where I just want to keep running this version. And as I just said, like now it's only in a way my best tricks or my favorite movements and sequences. So it feels right. I'm not 21 anymore, and there's no need of adding something new all the time or to getting new tricks or to, I don't know. It just feels like now I got like the best of those 17 years of rope. It's all in one package. And the last thing I would say on that point is also, well, the audience reacts always differently and different countries, different venues. Even when I did 4 months, my last contract was in Stuttgart for 4 months. Never the same kind. Well, sometimes was more crowded, sometimes more quiet. And I like how with live art, the audience always influences you. And I'm someone who really likes to look directly at like really stare at someone's eyes, just trying to connect and see how someone will react to your act. That for me became the whole game change, actually. Yeah.
When did you learn that to connect with the audience?
Honestly, I think my last year at ENC, literally. Wow. And that's a comment that I got from a few coaches who, when we would present our acts, would tell me, or students, "You're really looking at us, aren't you?" I said, yeah, like I want to know what people are feeling, or I want them to feel what I'm feeling. So I really want to, it's for me that's now like it's a gift to be able to perform for people right there, and I share a moment with them that will never repeat itself because every day is a different story, different person. So I think early on, I'm in my teens. I was like, I want to see what are they feeling, and how can I get them to smile broader, like have a light, like just what can I do to really get them,
I mean, this speaks to the vulnerability of really connecting with an audience when you're doing the work, because the risk in that is that they're not smiling, right? That they're hating what you're doing, like, and how that affects you. What do you do in those situations? Well, does it make you want to work harder?
You move on to the other row. You're like, hey, well, it's like, and at one point, I was like, I won't try to beat a dead horse. Like, if you're grumpy or if you decide you're going to text my old act, fair, I'll go to the one to the left. Or it's or sometimes like I've been on shows where musicians are on stage, I'll look at the musicians, or I'll find someone, or even once it was like the backstage manager in the wings, like winking and just like, well, someone is having a good time tonight. I'm gonna find a person,
Oh, hey there. I just wanted to interrupt this interview real quick to just say one real quick little thing about myself, which is that I am not only the host of the Artist Athlete podcast. No. She is a business woman, and I run a whole company dedicated to the education and inspiration of circus artists. That goes from people who are just doing it, weekend warriors, as a hobbyist, recreationally, or if you're a professional, you've put in the hours and you need more resources, go to theartistathlete.com. There are a ton of recorded workshops, online manuals and ebooks, everything you could possibly need from me and from some guests on this show about everything from nutrition to training your shoulders to really specific aerial moves that you need to master. Again, theartistathlete.com. And just because you went there from listening to this podcast, use code PODCAST and get 15% off your entire purchase. That's right. Theartistathlete.com. Use code PODCAST at checkout for 15% off your entire purchase. And have a great day. Back to the episode. We've talked a bit about how your act has changed in the 17 years. How has Circus changed in the last 17 years?
Well, for one thing, there are loads of artists now. That is, it has changed tremendously, because when I entered the industry, that was 2004, so early 2000, and felt at the time like there were, of course, less acts, and it felt like you would always see in a way the same people performing. Like I've seen like those like Aurelia Katz or the Pellegrini brothers or Natalia Vassiliuk or Chris Premo, Anatoly, like all these people. It felt like if you were at the time going online and looking at programs for different shows, oh yeah, like of course they have either Aurelia or they have the Pellegrinis or they have Cremo or they have like it felt like there was less acts and even if they weren't like festival winners, all I've seen it go on the road 3 times the last month on different websites, it felt some way like it was almost like a star system. It also felt like early on acts were just being sold as a product and they were polished. I remember the first time I went to the Winter Garden and it was I think 6 or 7 acts for the whole show. My jaw dropped because there was no hesitation. Each move is clear, even like tiniest finger. The accents are there. Costumes fit the body, fit this music, fit the artist. It felt like nothing was left to improvisation or it was guess. So I think also in the early 2000s, acts were less about throwing something together. It was more about having a product. And people had even many artists only had like that one promo shot. Again, like you would see, oh, that trapeze girl is the same shot in every theater she goes. So I feel like now, I would say in the 2010s and so on, the industry wanted more people that are more skilled, or even many people now will only get hired if they have to act. Like some directors now are saying, okay, well, you need an aerial and a ground act, or you need to have a juggling and a trapeze. Or it seems like at the time there was less need. You could do more if you had more, but you were being booked for one act. Where now it feel like you're getting booked, which is not a bad thing at all, but booked for your skills. For how many things can you do? Having an act is still a great safety net, and it's still something that is essential, actually. But I do feel now there is more need or a desire from companies to have people that can do loads of things, actually.
Do you think that demand that someone, I want to call it a generalist, even though I feel like that, I think that's accurate though, like to generally know how to do a lot of skills, they kind of make a distinction between that and like a specialist who does one thing really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that we've in some way like sacrificed that precision for a generalist model in circus?
I think we have. That's the thing I'm gonna say. Like again, like I've been here for a while, but I'm not an expert in no way. But I must say I do miss like those classic acts in a way. Like the way that now when I go see shows, often I will feel or I will think, oh, that's the second act I'm seeing now. Or also because people are being asked often to do it with a different song or adapt your act to X, Y, and Z. You're flexible. That's awesome. But I think, unfortunately, we've lost this like polish that acts used to have. Sometimes I do miss seeing clear, full product, from the amount of gel in their hair to how many accents or instruments are in the song to every move from the second they make their first step on stage. I think I do miss this. There's just this. How polished acts used to be, and how also you could tell someone has spent 20,000 hours on a hoop, and that's all they've ever done.
Yeah.
And now it feels like it's considered to be a flop. Oh, well, like you only do Diabolo? Oh. But then when you do see a great Diabolo artist who has been doing nothing but, it blows your mind.
And as an audience member, I feel like you also feel taken care of. Because you know that person knows everything. And so you can just enjoy it. Whereas sometimes I feel like I have this experience where I will know because I'll know people in the production, or even if I don't, actually, I will watch a show and be like, they threw this together in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know? And they put a price tag on it and they sold it as that. And and that's not to knock the artists within it, because they're generally like incredibly skilled, usually more skilled than what's demonstrated in the show. But I get what you mean, that there is this kind of like loss, and I'm interested to see if we ever circle back to that, or like what the direction is next, you know?
I think it also depends of where the artist comes from in a way. For instance, on that show that I did in Stuttgart, we had a guy in his early 40s who has been doing, coming from, literally born a circus, trad circus. He was in Rolla Bola. And for instance, he was given another song by the director. But in his case, the essence of the act really was his stage presence and his delivery of the tricks. I watch his act every single night on the wings just because watching him was a lesson in acting and in stage presence. So even though it wasn't his song, it was so connected to his tricks, to his movements, to the way he interacted with his wife on stage. It went beyond, oh, it's not his song or it's not his whatever. And he still really cared about giving the best show possible each night. He was impassioned, still is, about circus and rolla bola, where I feel with many artists nowadays, a lot of people go to circus because it's cool or it's fun or they happen to be good at tumbling and flipping. In that case, I think maybe there's less caring about the act and about the show. It's more, oh, well, I do it because I can, or because it's fun, or because. And if it goes back to really, like this guy from Circus I was working with, that's all he's done his whole life, and he can't. He told me like he can't imagine a life without a circus, without being on stage. It's really his deepest passion and what he really wants to do. It's not, oh, I'll do this until I'm bored or until my body breaks. It just, that is what I want to do the most.
Well, what was it? Who was the artist? The rollerball artist?
Davide Roberto. So Italian guy. And yeah, just again, like one of these acts that you can watch every single night just for the presence.
Oh yeah, I know. I asked because I was on a show with an Italian rollerball artist who had been at Demand when it was like the fifth, Demand ever, and same act. And you're like, oh my God, yeah. But same, like I watched his act every night. I couldn't not. Because I wonder, with this star system, it makes it kind of frustrating because you see the same people. It's almost like you have to like break into becoming a star and then you get this exposure. Whereas with like the generalists or like having new people come out all the time, there is this kind of like evolution of like, what's the next trick? What's the next hot thing? And it's, in some ways it's pushing the art form further or evolving it in a way that I don't think it could if you always had the same people showing up doing the same thing all the time. What do you think, Martin, the like relationship of like circus and tradition is?
Meaning?
Yeah, totally. That was not very clear. I guess for me, I see circus, there's an aspect of circus that doesn't exist in dance. It doesn't exist in acting. It has a very like solid core of like the trick, the relationship to the audience, the skill, the performance. And there's something within it that I feel like gets carried with tradition. And something that I see as more dance, more theater, more other skill, BMX, like gets incorporated into it, is that starts to become very, like it starts to dissolve the core of circus, those traditional elements. And so I'm kind of wondering like what your thoughts on that are, since I've just shared mine. Do you feel in your 17 years, obviously you're not like 5 generations, but but do you get a sense of what I'm talking about, or that need to preserve something?
Yeah, well, okay, I'm getting you now.
You picking up what I'm putting down?
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the big lessons that we shouldn't forget from traditional circus and never raise our nose to trad circus. There is nothing wrong about tricks, but in a way, the focus should remain the artist delivering the tricks. I'm struggling when I'm hearing people saying, oh, like this act, it's all about the tricks, or, oh, there's too much focus on the tricks. Yeah, well, at one point, even back in the early centuries, people went to circus for that reason, to see the triple salto, the salto mortale, the wire girl high up in the air. That is the root. There is no need to shy away from it. However, again, especially when I live in Europe, I would go at least twice a year, like really trad circus. I disagree that it's all about the tricks, because looking back at all these trad circus I've seen, in a way, the stars remain the artists. Like the way they present a trick, especially I think of even like jugglers that don't risk their lives by throwing balls or clubs in the air. They had a way of catching club, or to prepping for throwing 10 balls in the air, or I think traditional circus artists really had and have a way of presenting tricks and an act that actually, if you look at it from the right way, it isn't about how high they go, how a trick is. It's who they are, what are they offering. I really feel that when it comes to contemporary circus nowadays, because there's a school of thought that is a bit like anti-technique and no tricks and uh, just no technique. My perfect example of that is vertical rope, like Coloris, where I'm struggling, for instance, if I'm seeing a nice rope piece and then 2 or 3 minutes and the artist just stops to take beats for a big release trick. If you stop an act to perform a trick, for me, that is the problem in a way. But if you are able to move like for instance, tied wire artists, many are gifted dancers, and the way, not singing ballet or flamenco, whatever it is, the way they move on the wire is just, it's again like a phrase, it's endless from platform to platform. And yeah, they'll throw a trick, a jump, a split, a pirouette, but at the end of the day, the act is not about that height or that trick, that big moment. It is about the whole thing. It really is about the movement. So I think contemporary circus, really, we don't have to hide our technique. Just remember that the act cannot stop or only be about a trick. It has to be about the movement and the person that is performing the act. Yeah.
Do you think that aspect of like performance quality can be taught?
Oh, yes, not in a book, but I think even when I look back at some of the teachers that I had, one can learn to actually care about all the aspects of performance. Or again, how do you link movements and make a long phrase and not make it stunt, stunt, stunt? Or yeah, so I really think it is, you can learn to be better at presenting an act. I wouldn't write a book on it again. I think it's more that is shared, and go and see a lot. Like I said, when I was in Europe, I would see Circus every year, but also I would go see the opera, the ballet, the contemporary piece. I think the more you see, because there is a lot out there, the better informed you are. Also, well, for me, it's a bit like when I hear someone say, "Oh, I don't want to go and do like a cruise ship," or "I don't want to go and do trailer caravan circus," or "I don't want to go X or Y." Well, unless you've really seen it firsthand, and often unless you've lived it firsthand, how do you don't like it? You need, I think, to be exposed to as much circus as possible to be a better artist as well. You don't have to go say, well, if you hate, I don't know, if you hate burlesque show and sword swallowing and those things, well, don't go see one every week. But at least see one or two, and then, well, okay, and I won't buy a ticket for anymore. But I think there's a balance of not being only a performer, an audience member for only what you love. Have favorites. Like, for instance, I'm not a big fan of punk music. I don't have any in my library, but there's a bit of everything in my music library. And I don't listen to each song every single day. I have favorites. But between my most listened and my least listened, there is a gap, you know?
I love that, though. Like the idea that you can learn to care when you said that, because it kind of goes back to that idea of like caring about an audience, right? Because I do know artists who are like, I don't do this for the audience. I do it for myself and my feelings.
Oh,
and
no. That's a big no for me because, well, and I got this feeling from many contemporary artists where I'm in the audience, I'm watching you on stage, and I felt I could be home and you'd be doing the same thing. You don't have to look at someone in the eyes, you don't have to stare at each audience member. But this whole, oh, it's for me, not for the audience. Well, it is live art, it is performance. You cannot deny that there's are people watching you. And if you want it to be solely for yourself, be in a studio. Don't ask people to spend time and money to come and watch you if it's only for you. I'm having a hard time with this concept. I think it should be because you love doing it and you want to share this. But if it's only for yourself, then don't ask people again to spend time and be there when it won't affect you. Like if it's only about you, why having go over, you know?
You said earlier, that you can never, like, if they ask you to change the music, you can never just like copy and paste.
Mm-hmm.
What is when you get a contract and they give you the music they want you to use or direction, what's your process and how long do you need to kind of integrate that with what you have, since what you have is already so solid and stable and you know it so well?
Depending of the concept, I will often push for either my song or one that I know that I can work with, just so I know I can deliver a better product. But if they are insisting on a song that I don't have, then it's the earlier the better. And then just listening to it on loop and trying to feel the energy and picking the right accents. It's to me, it's really about I want to know this song inside out. And then the moment I start performing with a song, I just stop listening to it. It's like it is sacred. Like, okay, this is for on stage only. I do not want to hear the song anywhere else. Again, like you want to be going back to wanting to care.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be prepared when you come and perform or when you arrive for rehearsals. I want to have already an idea of what I will be able to perform, and I want to actually have like, something to offer. And in most cases, when I've worked with directors that were imposing music, I told them firsthand, well, what you will see today is not the quality of what you saw in the video, because that song I know inside out. That was ran for X amount of shows, but it will grow from here. And then I think not being afraid also giving away of relinquishing some power, meaning that it isn't your song, it isn't what you used to. So getting your directors or choreographers' opinion on going a different way might be best because it isn't your act 100% anymore. It is another song, another concept. So I think being able to rely on someone else's eyes and taste will pay for that scenario. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that you come in and you kind of manage expectations and say, like, this is what I have now, but this is not what it will be on stage because I'm still
you're still learning,
integrating
honestly,
yeah, your vision with what I can bring to the table. Totally. You mentioned you were a writer at the beginning. Super cool. And this love for live performance, which I totally get and share with you. And I have a struggle that I often think about. And I'm wondering, I want to hear your thoughts on it. And it is that the ephemeral nature of live performance, that the art that you're experiencing is something that you will only experience in that moment. And that's different from writing or painting or sculpture or anything like that, where the artist makes something and that thing that they have made is their legacy as an artist. Whereas as performers, our legacy almost can't exist because what we make happens and then goes away. Do you know what I mean? How do you contend with that? To me, it makes me kind of frustrated and sad. I wish that I could freeze moments in time so that I could have a legacy as a performer.
I'm kind of split on this one actually, because what I'm struggling with, because I've had some publications that I've written for magazines and for books for other projects, and once it's published, I won't read it again because I want to go back and change. So for me, having something frozen in time, I find that scary actually. Like so that's what I have very few videos out on public for YouTube because, well, that was on that given night what I performed.
Right.
Same thing with some text that I wrote. Like that was on that day, on that time, going through this. And some of my editors have told me, like, when I would write them for online content, a month later, oh, would you mind turning extra? Like, Martin, it's been polished. Move on. So, in a way, what I like about live art is that you are able to always change it, to always go back and revisit and give it some new nuance. Or actually, the frozen in time aspect of it is scary to me, actually. That you can't always adjust and tweak. That's perfectionist here as well. So yeah.
No, that's fascinating. And it really speaks to like that idea of like perfectionist, but also of like love of process versus love of outcome.
Totally, yeah.
I would say. It's been so cool to talk to you about all this. What advice would you give to yourself at the beginning of your career?
Also based on what I know now, but even though, look up, because you can and you will learn from every single contract encounter, and never be afraid to ask questions. Even if it takes like 10 hours in a day or whatever it is, the amount of knowledge that is present, not only in the industry, but in our world. A tech who's only coming in with their trash cans, or another artist who's applying makeup in a way you never saw before, or really, when I think of all the people that I've worked with over the years, even over a short amount of times, this is a never-ending learning. Like, it's sure you have school, whether it's ENC in Brussels, in China, whatever it is, but you will keep on learning forever. Like you never get bored of learning, and also never be afraid to ask for questions. Even, before Facebook, Instagram, all those things, I had like 18, 19 cold emails. People that I somehow found, like artists, I somehow found their website and their email address. And I asked them bluntly, oh, what do you think of this show? Oh, how do you like, or how could I get booked, like in a polite way, not like, oh, give me a job. But I got one trapeze artist that I reached out, was it 19 or so, like a rigging question. Oh, I'm going to be working like in a circus stand. What do you think of, how did you, I would say 90% replied, even though I was like this kid, or I was like 20 or something. So I think now, especially with Facebook and like all the online stuff, it is so easy to ask without, again, being polite, not looking for, being an opportunist. I don't want to get like your visibility, whatever it is. Or like, please, book on your show. No. But something as simple as, oh, like I saw you work for that company. I'm heading there myself and I'm afraid about X or Y, which I had also some younger artists wrote me for that kind of question. And if it's nicely, politely asked, of course we'll answer. So you will learn, and you can learn all day, every day, every contract. So go ahead and learn it all, basically.
I love that. And the opportunity to learn is also your responsibility, and you get that through asking questions. That's so cool. Martin, thank you so much for coming on today.
It's a pleasure.
This has been an awesome conversation.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
That was my interview with Martin Frenette. I have a bunch of notes, and I'm actually going to go backwards this time from my last note to my first note. His last piece of advice was see lots of circus. And I love this piece of advice so much because it's so true. You don't know what's out there. You can't know what you like, what you love, what you would never want to do on stage unless you can see as much as you can. And I know if you're in small towns, if you're in North America, it's less available than it is in Europe. The culture is just a little different. That doesn't mean that there aren't circuses around. And if you're just seeing aerial showcases, if you're just seeing youth circus, there's usually circuses that come to town in the spring, summer, fall seasons. I definitely recommend this to, especially, I engage a lot with aerialists. Those are the people I coach. Those are the people I train with the most. I always recommend this to people who don't do this as a profession, even if it's just your hobby, even if it's your like life and everything that means everything to you, but you don't make money off of it. go see more Circus because it will give you a better idea of the context in which the tricks you're learning came from. It will give you a better idea of how they're performed, of people's attitudes to presenting them on stage, which can be really, really helpful even going back to your own studio and figuring out your own stuff. It's really inspiring. So go see lots of Circus. Martin and I also discussed the difference between the beginning of his career and now. He says before, in the beginning, although 17 years ago, there was what he called a star system, which means there were fewer people doing a lot more of the work. The acts were more like products. The promo was simpler. Everything was a little more straightforward. And now we have so many circus artists out there. We also have so many platforms which these circus artists can show their work, right? We have Instagram, we have TikTok, we have YouTube, we have all this virtual stuff going on in addition to the stage, the street, the circus ring, obviously, all these places where you would see it otherwise. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? I think it's just a different thing. It's a different way of approaching it. It is important to know if you want to be a professional, that the more skills you can hone, the better you are in the current environment, right? Because you can get hired for more stuff and people tend to like a pretty refined generalist who have a lot of different acts and different arts and different skills to offer a show. But I think there's still space for those specialists. And when I say a specialist, I don't mean just a person who like does one apparatus. I don't think Martin and I are just talking about like if you just do aerial silks. It's like if you do it and you have an act that's a product that you know every single millisecond of. You know exactly where your finger goes on minute 4, second 16. You know, you have so much precision, which may be like just like when you hear that downbeat in your head, you're like, yes, and my finger twitches. Those are the acts that I'm always blown away by and inspired by. And I think it's really cool to put that much time and energy into just that compact act. If you want to hear a really good example of that, a couple episodes ago, I interviewed PJ and Eve Diamond, who are Girls Gone Rope. And they talk a lot about how precise they had to be. So you can go check out that episode. The very last point that Martin talked about in this interview, this quote that I love that I'm gonna hold on to, especially going into my first week back in training, is your body knows what tricks it likes to perform. So does your heart. It's that such a simple principle. Do what you love. And I know it's real easy to get carried away when you see the fresh new skills on Instagram, when you see people who are doing crazy stuff that their hearts and their bodies probably love to do, maybe, or maybe they don't. Maybe they're just caught up in the cycle with the rest of us trying to keep up with each other. But there is something to be said for really knowing what your body and your heart love to do. And again, like refining that to the best it can be, rather than always trying to do the next thing. And ironically, when you follow your body and you follow your heart, that's when you start to innovate qualities and skills that are yours. And that's when you actually start to push the envelope yourself because you're creating, you're in charge. You're not watching everybody else to figure out and try to keep up. You're on your own path and people will notice that. They notice Martin, he's been working for 17 years. He's going to work for 17 more at this point. If you want to see Martin's signature act, you can check it out. The link is in the show notes. He's also on Instagram at Martin Frenette on stage, but I don't think he has any posts. He doesn't really need to be on social media that much. Must be nice. But I post on social media a lot. You can follow me on Instagram at _artist_athlete. I'm on Facebook, The Artist Athlete. My website is theartistathlete.com. I'm also on TikTok, _artist_athletes on TikTok. And if you love what you're listening to, you cannot get enough. You need another episode. You need this to continue. Go to patreon.com/theartistathlete and sign up to become a Patreon today. Thanks for listening. I'll talk at you next week, friends, fans, and foes. The Artist Athlete podcast is supported solely by donations from people like you. Here's what some of those people have to say.
Hi, my name is Noah and I do hand balancing. Hi, my name is Woody and I do Leo walk. Thank thank you for listening to the Artist Athlete Podcast.
Hi everyone, I'm Dominique, a ground acrobat, trapeze artist, and coach, currently bringing Circus to the extremely cold but very beautiful Northern Ontario, Canada. Circus has changed my life and I'm so grateful to everyone in this community. Find me on Instagram at DomUpsideDown or my website domupsidedown.com.
Aloha, my name is Beth Russell and I live on the beautiful island of Maui, Hawaii. I am an aerial artist and movement instructor specializing in chakra yoga to keep me balanced and grounded. I play with silks, trapeze, lyra, rope, acro, aerial yoga and dance, slacklining, pole, bungee, and climbing. Really anything that goes up and allows me to explore 3D space. You can find my dedicated aerial page on Instagram at Maui Aerialist. If you find yourself coming to Maui, let's play.
Hey there, friends, fans, and enemies. This is Chris Alston, Patreon of the Artist Athlete Podcast, straps artist and lyra performer and acrobat out of Greenville, South Carolina. So if you're ever passing through, make sure to stop in and see me and my friends. We have a wonderful space, and we'd love to see you.
Hi, my name is Erica Lee. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm an aerialist. I teach performing arts to elementary school during the day and do pole and swing and rope by night. I really like the Artist Athlete podcast because it gives me a lot of circus goals to look forward to. It gives me a lot of insight on what's going on around the world in circus, and that's why I'm Patreon.
Hello all. Thank you for tuning in to the Artist Athlete podcast. I am Opal Schwartz from Minneapolis, Minnesota. If you're ever in the cities, feel free to stop by the Aviary Minneapolis. It's a great time. With that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and goodbye.
Hey there, artists and athletes. This is Andy Smith, owner and artistic director at Saltaire Circus School in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. And I want to thank you for contributing to the Artist Athlete podcast. If you ever find yourself down in Florida, come check us out. Whether you're an artist, athlete, or someone ordinary just looking to be extraordinary, we got a place for you.